1922. It is incredible, but nothing has been heard of Holding. For 3 weeks, a search has been going on. Cyclists, police, farmers, people from villages. At 10:30 morning of the 7th of March, 1922, Flying Officer B, Holding, had set out from an aerodrome near Chester, England, upon what was intended by him to be a short flight in Wales. About 11 o'clock, he was seen near Llangollen, Wales, turning back, heading back toward Chester. Holding disappeared far from the sea, and he disappeared over a densely populated land. One of my jobs was that of looking over 6 London newspapers for the years 1990 to 1926, and it is improbable that anything was learned of what became of Holding later without my knowing of it. I haven't a datum upon which to speculate in the Holding mystery, but now I have a story of 2 men whose track on land stopped as abruptly as stopped Holding's track in the sky, and this time I note an additional circumstance. The story of these men is laid in a surrounding of hates of the intensity of Oriental fanaticism. Upon July 24th, 1924, at a time of Arab hostility, Flight Lieutenant W.T. Day and Pilot Officer D.R. Stewart were sent from British headquarters upon an ordinary reconnaissance over a desert in Mesopotamia. According to schedule, they would not be absent more than several hours. I take this account from the London Sunday Express, September 21st, 1924. The men did not return, and they were searched for. The plane was soon found in the desert. Why it should have landed was a problem. There was some petrol left in the tank. There was nothing wrong with the craft. It was, in fact, flown back to the aerodrome. But the men were missing. So far as can be ascertained, they encountered no meteorological conditions that might have forced them to land. There were no marks to indicate that the plane had been shot at. There may be some way, at present very exclusively known, of picking an aeroplane out of the sky. According to the rest of the story, there may be some such way of picking men out of a desert. In the sand around the plane were seen the footprints of Day and Stewart. They were traced side by side for some 40 yards from the machine. Then, as suddenly as if they had come to the brink of a cliff, the marks ended. The landing of the plane was unaccountable. But accepting that as a minor mystery, the suggested explanation of the abrupt ending of the footprints was that Day and Stewart had been captured by hostile Bedouins who had brushed away all the trails in the sand, starting at a point 40 yards from the plane. But hostile Bedouins could not be thought of as keeping on brushing indefinitely, and a search was made for a renewal of traces. Aeroplanes, armored cars, and mounted police searched. Rewards were offered. Tribal patrols searching unceasingly for 4 days. Nowhere beyond the point where the tracks in the sand ended abruptly were other tracks found. The latest account of which have record is from the London Sunday News, March 15, 1925, Mystery of the Missing British Airmen Still Unsolved. London Evening News, September 28, 1923, Second Lieutenant Morand, while at shooting practice at Gladoux, France, himself firing at a target on the ground while a sergeant piloted the machine, suddenly fell back, calling to the pilot to land as he had been wounded. It was found that he had a serious wound in his shoulder, and he was taken to Bordeaux by the hospital airplane. It was said that he had been shot, but no clue has been found as to the origin of the shot. I especially noticed this case because it was at a time of other accidents to French flyers. The other accidents were different. In that day, they did not occur in France, and in that they were not shootings. I know of no case that in all particulars I could match with the disappearance of Day and Stewart, but there are records of airmen who, flying over a land where the sight of them directed hate upon them, were unaccountably picked out of the sky. In the summer of 1923, French aviators told of inexplicable mishaps and forced landings while flying over German territory. The instances were so frequent that there arose a belief that, with secret rays, the Germans were practicing upon French airplanes. From a general impression of an existence of irrationality, we can conceive that the Germans were practicing upon French airplanes, something that they were most particularly endeavoring to keep secret from France, if they had any such powers, but I think that they had not, or that officially they had not. There may have been a hidden experimenter unknown to the German authorities. An article upon this subject was published in the London Daily Mail September 1st, 1923. Two theories have been put forward. One is that by a concentration of wireless rays, the magneto of the aeroplane may be affected, and another is that a new ray which will melt certain metals has been discovered. In this connection, it is notable that most of the forced landings of the French aeroplanes when flying from Strasbourg to Prague have taken place in the vicinity of a German aerodrome near Fürth. It was said that for some time at the German wireless station at Nune, there had been experiments upon directional wireless with the object of sending out rays concentrated along a certain path as the beams of a searchlight are directed. The authorities at Nune denied that they had knowledge of anything that could have affected the French aeroplanes in ways reported or supposed. Automobiles can be stopped by wireless control if they be provided with special magnetos, otherwise not. Sir Oliver Lodge was quoted by the Daily Mail as saying that he knew of no rays that could stop a motor unless specially equipped. Professor A.M. Lowe's opinion was that someday distant motors may be stopped. I feel confident that in 50 or 60 years' time such a thing will be possible. Professor Lowe said that he knew of laboratory experiments in which, over a distance of 2 feet, rays of sufficient power to melt a small coil of wire had been transmitted, but as to the reported accidents in Germany, Professor Lowe said, there is a wide difference between transmitting such a power over a distance of a foot or two and a distance of 1,000 or 2,000 yards. In the Daily Mail, April 5th, 1924, was an account of invisible rays which had been discovered by Mr. H. Grindle Matthews, powerful enough under laboratory conditions to stop the engine of a motorcycle at a distance of 50 feet. Of course, high among virtues are the honorable lies of governments. Whether virtuously said or accurately reported, I don't know, but it is said or reported that in the year 1929, the British government spent $500,000 investigating alleged long-distance death rays and developed nothing that was effective. It is said or reported that the Italian Navy gave opportunity to an inventor to demonstrate what he could do with death rays, but that his demonstrations came to nothing. We have no data for thinking that in the year 1929, any government was in possession of a secret long-distance death rays. The forced landings of French aeroplanes in the summer of 1923 remain unexplained. There may be powerful rays that are not electromagnetic. French aviators may have been brought to Earth by no power that is called physical, though I know of no real demarcation between what is called physical and what is called mental. See back to the series of mysterious attacks in England in April and May 1927. 3 times, as if acted upon by an unknown influence, automobiles behaved unaccountably. Our data are upon accidents that have not been satisfactorily explained. There have been occurrences that were similar to effects that inventors are, by mechanical means, striving for in the case of military efficiencies. And these experiments are practical persons. Yes, it may be that we are on track of a subtler slaughter. It looks as if a lonely possessor of a secret, such as is called a cult, operated wantonly or in the malicious exercise of a power upon automobiles in England in the months of April and May 1927. He was a criminal. But I am a practical thinker and a useful citizen on the track of much efficiency, which will be at the disposal of God's second choice of people, which I think we must be, judging by the afflictions that are upon us at this time of writing. Power that would, by this great nation, be used only righteously, if anybody could ever distinguish between righteousness and exploitation and tyranny. One of the engaging paradoxes of our existence, which strip mathematics of meaning, is that a million times a crime is patriotism. I am unable to conceive that a power to pick planes out of the sky would be so terrible as to stop war, because up comes the notion that counter operations would pick the pickers. If we could have new abominations so unmistakably abominable as to hush the lubricators who plan murder to stop slaughter, but that is only dreamery here in our existence of the hyphen, which is the symbol of hypocrisy. New York Times, October 25th, 1930, that about 40 automobiles had been stalled for an hour on the road in Saxony between Risse and Wurzen. About 40 chauffeurs were probably not voiceless in this matter, and if the German government were experimenting with secret rays, that was some more of its public secrecy. In the Times, October 27th, was quoted the mathematician and former premier of France, Paul Penlev. No experiment thus far conducted would permit us to credit such a report nor give any prospect of seeing it accomplished in the near future. Upon May 26, 1925, see the London Daily Mail, May 28, 1925, at Andover, Hampshire, England, a corporal of the RAF making a parachute practice jump was killed by a fall of 1,900 feet from an airplane. There is not a datum for thinking that there was anything to this occurrence that aligns it with other occurrences told of in this chapter, but there is an association. About the time of the accident or whatever it was that befell this man, and at the same place, Flight Sergeant Frank Lowry and flying officer John Kenneth Smith, pilot, were in an airplane making wireless tests. They had been in the air about 15 minutes when Smith, having called to his companion without hearing from him, looked around and saw smoke coming from the back of cockpit and saw Lowry in a state of collapse. Lowry was dead. Flight Lieutenant Cyril Norman Ellen said that there was nothing in the machine likely to kill a man, and that Lowry must have come in contact with an electric current in the air. No similar case has been reported. In the Daily Mail, October 14, 1921, a writer, T. Gifford, tells of a scene of accidents at a point on a road in Dartmoor. The story is like the account of the series of accidents to automobiles in England in April and May 1927, except that the accidents were strictly localized. The story told by Gifford is that one day in June 1921, a doctor riding on his motorcycle with his two children in a sidecar suddenly at this point on the Dartmoor Road called to the children to jump. The machine swerved and the doctor was killed. Several weeks later at this place, a motor coach suddenly swerved and several passengers were thrown out. Upon August 26, 1921, a Captain M, for whom I apologize, it is not often that Mr. X or a Captain M appears in these records, was at this point on the road thrown from his motorcycle. Interviewed by Gifford, he told after evasions that something described by him was invisible hands and seized upon his hands, forcing the machine into the turf. More details were published in the Daily Mail, October 17th this year. The scene of the accidents was on the road near the Dartmoor village of Post Bridge. In the first instance, the victim was Dr. E.H. Helby, medical officer of Princetown Prison. In Light, August 26, 1922, a correspondent noted another accident at this point. Details of the fourth accident were told in the London Sunday Express, September 12, 1926. The victim was traveling on his motorcycle. He was suddenly and violently unseated from his mount and knew no more until he regained consciousness in a cottage to which he had been carried after a collapse. The injured man could not explain. All right.